Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 163, or I believe it's part 5 of our dressing room. So let's go ahead and open up Unity, and I believe where we left off, we're just about to cycle through our weapons, and also have the weapon stick to the character mesh when we change character meshes. It doesn't really stick to your character mesh. What we're going to do is instantiate the new mesh and then put the weapon back there. So we've got our little scene open, and I'm actually just going to go straight into MonoDevelop. And I'm going to start with the instantiate weapon model part. Since I'm not going to be getting fancy with as far as displaying the item right now, all I want to do is, actually, we should start off on the on-GUI. Let's create a button for it, and it's going to be after instantiate weapon. So I'm going to call it, what do we call this function? Instantiate weapon model. Change character mesh. I'm sorry, I was in the wrong one right here. So I'm just going to add one. Let's go right below it. And I'll call this change weapon mesh. And I'm going to come down, I'm going to go right below the instantiate weapon model, and I'll create that function. And just to make sure I don't have any typos, I'll cut and paste. And it'll be private. It does not return anything, so it's a void. There we go. So all we're going to really do is basically the exact same thing we're doing with the weapon mesh one, if I can find that, which is right above here, the character one. So I'm just going to cut and paste this in. And we'll just change the parameters that need to be changed. So we're going to create a button. And I'm obviously going to want it in a different spot. For now, I'm just actually going to move it up above the middle button that we have for changing between fat and muscular characters. And I'll move it up another 35. Now, of course, you can move this anywhere you want, and we're going to want to add other buttons to it, maybe a slider to slide through all of our different items. But for now, I'm just going to set it on top of the other one, and we're going to want to change the variable name. And we're actually just going to grab the weapon index, and we're just going to print it out to string. And we'll just hit to string. Make sure you get your parentheses in there. And then we'll come down here, and all we're doing is increasing the index of that weapon index. And then instead of calling instantiate character model, we call instantiate weapon model. There we go. So let's go into instantiate weapon model. So when this is first called, we're going to look up the index, and if it's greater than the actual length of the weapon, we're just going to cycle it back down to 0. And that's pretty easy. So we'll just use one if statement. We're going to get the variable weapon index is greater than ca.weaponmesh.length, and we'll want to do a -1 because the length is always 1 greater than what the actual index is. We'll just say that the weapon index is equal to 0, so it just wraps around. So let's save that off, and we'll head into Unity, and let's just check that out. Our assets get re-imported, and we don't seem to have any errors, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit play, and we should get a button for it. Now the button's always going to be quite large compared to our little screen, and it's starting off at 0, so when I hit it, it goes to 1. And as you notice, we do have the sword. We still have to get rid of the mace. And when I hit it again, I get the axe. And I just keep adding more and more of the same. And if you actually click one of these, you'd look, they're all appearing under the weapon mount. So let's go ahead and delete the old one. So we'll come back in, and right under our instantiate command, we'll want to, right before the instantiate command, we'll want to go ahead and delete anything that's under the weapon mount. And we're going to do it the exact same way as when we're instantiating our character. So why not just cut and paste. And come back up to our instantiate weapon. And I'll just paste that code right in. And again, change the variables that we need. Now, we're actually going to be looking for our, not transform child, but the transform for our weapon mount, which we've actually already found right here. So I'm just going to, oh, sorry, this is it right here. So I'm just going to cut and paste that in instead of using transform. And we don't need the position part. And we'll do the exact same thing here. And right here. We're just deleting the position part. So that should delete everything under our weapon mount now. So let's go try that out. We'll let our assets re-import. No error showed up, so let's start it up. And we got our button, and it's not deleting, so it cannot remove component. Let's take a look. So it's saying that it cannot remove the transform because the mesh filter and mesh render depend on it. That's actually a pretty easy fix. Let me see, right here is where we're destroying the item that's under the web mount. But if you actually look, this actually returns a transform. And instead of returning the transform, let's return the game object that this transform is a part of. And that should allow us to delete the whole thing. So I'm just going to quickly save that off, and we'll try this again. Alright, so we're going to hit play, and away we go. And there we go. If we click on the sword, we're under our weapon mount, and as you can see, it just keeps cycling through the different weapons. Great. Let's stop that. Actually, let's start it back up. The next thing we want to do is have the weapon stay the same when we're switching meshes. So let's head back into MonoDevelop, and we'll go to the instantiate weapon part. There's not much we need to do here. What we're going to do is call this function at the end of our instantiate character model, and that'll just tell it to take the current weapon that we're supposed to be wielding and attach it back to this model. And there's one more update we're going to have to do. Up here in the start method, you notice that we're calling the instantiate character model, and then we're getting a reference to the player before we call the instantiate model. We're actually going to move this now, and I'm going to bring it down here and right before that instantiate. But instead of actually trying to find the actual player, or at least the object tagged player, and then getting the component to it, we don't have to actually look now. We already know what the player, we already have a reference to the player, which is the character mesh. So we'll just use that, and we'll just get its player component. So let's save that off. Let's head into Unity, and we'll go try it out. We did not receive any errors. So we'll just hit play. And let's rotate them a bit. And we're switching items. And there we go. Notice we're switching between meshes. Now the sword's jumping up and down. And that might have to do with the instantiation. So let's take a look at that. We'll head back into MonoDevelop. And let's head up to where we're actually instantiating our weapon, which is right here. And we are putting it under the weapon mount when we create it. We're setting its transform parent. And we're resetting the rotation. So I'm not 100% sure why we're getting that bounce. Let me just maximize on play one more time, and let's take another quick look here. So when we switch meshes, it's bouncing up. And in case you can't tell, my son has come down to help with the latest tutorial. So I'll look into it. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head why we're getting that bounce. It's instantiating at the right spot. At least it should be, but for some reason it's instantiating over here and then moving. But since my son's down here, I'll call this one an end. I'll look into it and I'll get back to you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.